Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Today is Wednesday, April 1st. And aside from it not being April Fool's Day, we've canceled that for this year. It is Census Day for the Census 2020 count, which comes every 10 years. And today begins the process of making sure, for our purposes, that every resident of Westchester County, every man, woman, and child is counted, and that we have an accurate picture of who lives in Westchester County so that we can benefit from the various calculations of both political representation and grants and financial support that comes based on population. I'm joined by Blanca Lopez, who is in our county executive team. She, amongst other things, has been tasked with the Census 2020 efforts in Westchester County. She is a resident of the village of Portchester, where she's been active there as well in census activities. Blanca, thank you for joining us today.
Sure, my pleasure. Good morning.
We'll start with the, sort of the generalities. This year is a very different year in that there's been so much more energy and effort put in by local governments and even by the federal government to make sure we have an accurate count this year. And the old image that I go back when I was a young kid, the census taker was a person who walked down the street that you lived on or walked through the apartment building you lived in, had a clipboard, knocked on the door and asked some questions. The process is very different this year. Can you go over how we've started online and proceed forward?
Sure. So as you had mentioned, for Census 2020, there is a new option as to how people can respond to the census, and that is online. So as of the week of March 8th, many of our households, many of our residents should have received an invitation by mail from the Census Bureau, inviting them to participate for Census 2020 online. The letter included a 12-digit code that people could use. They would go to my2020census.gov, enter in that 12-digit code, and they can respond to the census that way. Another option would be to call the Census Bureau. They can respond to the questionnaire over the phone, speaking to a census representative. And then the most traditional option would be to receive their paper questionnaire later on in April and May and participate by mail. So those are the three main options. And as you had mentioned, the last step would be to wait for a census enumerator to come and knock on your door, and you can answer your questions that way.
Now, I admit that I misplaced that original letter that had my special code, but I did go on to, my2020census.gov, and I was able to file online without the code, and it took me less than 10 minutes. Is that standard procedure?
Correct. So if people have misplaced their letter or may have written down their code and do not have it anymore, they can go to the website, again, my2020census.gov, and click on the link that says if you do not have a census ID. And that way they can participate without a code.
And you mentioned as well that people can dial a phone number and do it over the phone if they prefer to do that. Can you share that number with us?
Sure. So the census has provided 12 different phone lines, each line dedicated to a particular language. For our English-speaking friends, they can call 1-844-330-2020. And we also have a line in Spanish, which is 1-844-468-2020. And I'm just going to say this in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking friends. Si ustedes quieren participar en el censo decenal y quieren llamar a las oficinas del censo para participar por teléfono, pueden llamar al número de teléfono español, que es el 844-468-2020. Así pueden hablar con alguien que habla español y puede responder a las preguntas del censo.
So now that we have the ability to do it online, to do it by telephone, we're going to reach a point, I guess, in a very short period of time where if you haven't responded by either of those two mechanisms, you're going to get the questionnaire in the mail. And then at that point in time, people who are maybe not comfortable going online or not comfortable with doing over the phone can do sort of the traditional fill out the form and submit it. I gather the questions are very straightforward, not particularly complicated.
Correct. So paper questionnaires should be mailed out the week of April 8th. although some people have already received them. It's not complicated at all. Like, as I mentioned, it's only 9 questions. It should take approximately 10 minutes or so. It could take a little longer depending on how many people are in the person's household that they're responding on.
Now, in the case of the coronavirus outbreak, they certainly have made plans to push back both the due date, the end date of the census, as well as the time in which people would go out and do the traditional knocking on doors. That comes after a reasonable amount of time when people can respond by the mail documents. When do we expect to have the people going door to door, and over what period of time does that follow?
Sure. So initially, the Census Bureau was going to send out their census enumerators or census representatives to go door knocking at the end of April. Now that particular operation has been pushed back. It will now be at some point in May. Again, these dates are actually fluid because it all depends on where we are with respect to the social distancing and all the norms that we have to adapt to living under COVID-19.
A couple of very specific questions, given where we are right now. Because of the coronavirus, colleges are out of session. College kids are back home with mom and dad in the house that they grew up in. Do they file as a member of their parents' household, or do they file at the colleges where they are enrolled and where they're living?
So at the last meeting that we had by phone with the county's Complete Count Committee, our Commissioner Norma Drummond from the Planning Department invited Mario Garcia, who is a Census Community Specialist for the Bureau. This provided a good opportunity for him to give us information as to the various actions that the Census Bureau has decided to take, considering we're under a public health crisis. One of them, as I had mentioned, was to delay the door knocking process. The other one was a decision they made with respect to college students. So any student who is living on campus would traditionally be counted under the group quarters effort. This is a separate operation where a Census Bureau representative would contact the administrator of colleges or universities, and other facilities under group quarters can also be nursing homes, group homes, jails, and they would then receive, the Census Bureau would receive the information directly from that particular administrator. The Census Bureau has decided to continue to do that, despite the fact that college students are living at home. So while parents may be tempted to include their college student who would generally not be living at home on April 1st, they would be living on campus, they should not count their student at home. The colleges and universities will count them through the group quarters count.
Okay, very good. Also, because of the coronavirus, aside from some of these other things we've mentioned, there are a lot of people who are out of work, people who are hourly workers in the restaurant industry and other service industries. We have folks who are in what's now called the gig economy that really get paid only when they do a particular service, and that's their source of income. But I understand that even with the economic problems that we're having now, the Census Bureau is hiring. Make a pitch, because there may be people who may find that in the short term, that is a place of valid employment.
You're correct. The Census Bureau is still hiring. The last time we checked with them, they had not fully met their particular quota in terms of hires for this region. People who are interested can certainly go online and apply that way. They will go to www.census.gov, and they can click on the link to start their application. The types of jobs that people may obtain could be clerical positions. It could be calling people back. As you know, one of the questions on the census questionnaire is asking for a phone number. So many people will be hired to do just that, to call people back if anybody has a question about their questionnaire or something else related to the census. With respect to what they're being hired for in terms of field operations, initially it may have been work from the spring to the summertime. Obviously now under COVID, it might just be a summertime job that they will have, but again, they're still hiring. The salary, the per hour salary is increased from $21 an hour to $23 an hour. So we encourage everyone who's still interested to please go ahead and apply for a position.
And then finally, Blanca, we understand that the Census Bureau is developing statistics on a daily basis that track what the response is community by community based on a percentage of housing units that exist in the community. And that percentage sort of gives us an idea of which communities are getting, at least so far, a good turnout to the census and which ones need some additional effort in order to maximize. You want to cover a little bit about what that reporting process is like and the communities that in the early stages are doing well and the ones that could be doing better?
Sure. So as you had mentioned, and this is new to this census, the Census Bureau updates data on self-response rates. And as of March 31st, Westchester County self-response rate was 33.8%. Of that percentage, 31.8 were through the internet. When compared to New York State, we're actually doing a little better than the state. The state is at 31.1%, and the national rate right now is at 36.2%. With respect to the municipalities who are doing pretty well, we have Croton-on-Hudson, which is at 48.2% of a self-response rate, followed by Briarcliff Manor, 47.1%, the Village of Rybrook at 46.8%, Hastings at 46.8% as well, followed by Scarsdale at 44.9%. And when we look at the municipalities who may need a little extra push in terms of promoting census response rates, we have the City of Mount Vernon, which is at 23%. We have the Village of Portchester at 26.4%. And I just want to give you a little tidbit. Last night, actually, or yesterday afternoon, the mayor released a census video through Nixle, which is the emergency response alert that every village resident can sign up for. And he promoted the Census Bureau along with Trustee Marino in English and in Spanish. Yesterday's response rate in Portchester was at 25.1%. And today's at 26.4%. So it could be that that video promoting awareness kind of pushed the response rate for over a percentage point, which is great. We need to use any type of tactic to get the word out. Yonkers is at 27%, Elmsford and Sleepy Hollow at 30% each.
Well, it's encouraging to know that by targeting response rates, we have some idea of where we have to put extra emphasis and working through community organizations, local governments, that we can get the word out more thoroughly. We've been talking with Blanca Lopez regarding the Census 2020. Today's the kickoff day, Wednesday, April 1st. If you have not filed your census report at this point, you're watching us on Facebook, which means you have a computer, and you can very easily go on to my2020census.gov, and in the space of a few minutes, you can fill out your census form and be counted. And we certainly appreciate all the efforts that Blanca and members of the local communities have been doing on this area. We have a really cool tote bag, which we'll be giving out once we're able to interact with our friends at various local centers around the county. And that'll be a reminder that everyone counts as part of Census 2020. This is George Latimer, County Executive. We appreciate the time watching. We hope you'll stay safe out there and tune in again. We'll have another interview back on the issue of the coronavirus outbreak so you can stay well informed. Have a good day.
Thank you.